Alrighty, folks, welcome along to episode 87 of the Made to Create podcast. We are joined by members of Pride of the Raven and Moneyslane Flute Band, and we're going to be having a conversation about their experience this year at the Belfast International Tattoo. Folks, welcome along. Good to have you on the podcast. Delighted you're able to make it along for a recording.
Thanks for having us, Glenn.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
Good
Thank
stuff,
you, Glenn.
Nigel. You're a wee bit of a dog hand at this now,
absolutely. I'm still waiting my royalty check for the first one.
So, because Nigel was for those of you who've been following the podcast for any length of time, you'll know that the actual first bondsman that was covered in terms of an interview was Nigel, and in terms of his role with Pride of the Raven 4 years ago now, as we're saying. So crazy to think that's how it go, isn't it?
I would have said two if you had asked.
No, there you go.
It's old dates,
But
but
that was pre-COVID.
indeed, right
There you
now.
go. So, and William, how's things for yourself? All good?
Yes, all good. Pleased
Yeah.
to be here.
Brilliant. Good stuff. So maybe, William, what we'll do is maybe start with you here. Just in terms of setting the scene, maybe if there are people who don't know too much about Moneyslane in terms of them as a band, give us a wee kind of brief synopsis in terms of history, when you were formed, anything that you think people would find useful about your band, just to start off with.
Yeah, so Moneyslane is a small village just outside the town of Rathfriland. The band was formed in 1981, and initially as a Blood and Thunder band. And it wasn't really until sort of post 2010, at one point when the band got down quite low in numbers, sort of 3 drums, 7, 8 flutes, that the core of fellas in the band that was left decided to take the road of going melody. It was always something that we kind of had wanted to do and used that as an opportunity to make the step. So there's a lot of work went in over the next few years after that, going for more melody style drums and things like that, more military uniform. And I believe it was the 2015 parading season was the first year that we brought out tunes with parts in it, and it's been sort of a steady progression over the last 8 or 9 years. The band as well, whenever it was formed from its inception, was formed on Christian principles, as probably most people would that know us would tend to know, and that sort of forms a big part in what we do and how we do things. Whether that be from tunes that we play or events that we do, and we do a lot of Sunday services for loyal orders, things like that. So that plays a big part, and also how we go about fundraising and things as well.
Okay. How did you find that shift then at all? I don't want to go into this in too much detail, but how did you find that shift? Because that, for some bands, they go the opposite way. There's some bands have a melody and turn it around because their numbers have wanted to do something different. How did you find that working out for you?
Well, the fellas that were left were probably guys that had a strong sort of desire to do that, or at least at some point maybe in their say band career to play in a melody band. And even while we were Blood and Thunder, there was a lot of bands that we took influence from and enjoyed listening to. We probably actually listened to more melody bands and melody band CDs than Blood and Thunder. And it was kind of just sort of out of the blue decision. We're at a crossroads where the band was very close to going off the road. And we kind of thought maybe by taking it a different direction, it would help to sort of maybe boost our numbers and something different in the local area. So I suppose once we set sight on that's what we wanted to do, and everybody was fully behind that, it was probably just more, it was never going to happen overnight. It was more just kind of a roadmap, a continual plan of where we wanted to be every year, every couple of years, and sort of a longer goal of getting to the point where you were out on the road with parts, and sort of what you would class as being like a modern melody band. So it was probably just more a time frame than anything else, really.
Sure. Well, it's definitely paid off for you, is because you're one of the, I would say, one of the most tidy melody units that's on the road. I think these are very clean, very smooth playing band and stuff. So the time and effort that you should put in has definitely paid off.
Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose we'll focus a lot on all aspects of it. From the drill to sort of like the appearance inside or in uniform or off parade. The music that we'll play, so there's no stone left unturned in terms of the detail that we would tend to go into.
Yeah, no, you can tell, so you can't. So, Nigel, we'll maybe switch across to you. Obviously, we've had a wee bit of the Ravens history in terms of one before, but maybe just for people who may not have that kind of insight into where did the band come from, how long operating, etc. And
Well, they were formed in 1968 by a bunch of guys in and around the Ravenhill Road area, hence the name Pride of the Raven. I've been in it since 1973, so quite a long time. And something similar to what William's saying. They've always been a band that played marches and played jigs, but could mix it up. But as the years have went by, they've set their sights on better discipline, better marching, better interpretation of the music, etc., etc. There was a lot of influence brought to bear on bands from years ago on the melody side to improve all the time, and I have to say, Moneyslane are excellent, excellent. So that's where we're from, and that's pretty basic.
Yeah, because I think I think whenever you look back and that's sort of I know for me when I look back in sort of the early '80s side of things, I mean the Raven were definitely inspiring a lot of people in terms of what they were doing.
Well, it's my understanding that the Raven inspired Balnaran, believe it or not, and I do believe that one of their CDs does make reference to the fact, because we never missed the Balnaran's parade when it was in Kilkeel, when they were a Blood and Thunder band before they transitioned into a melody, and I'm led to believe that one of their CDs does make reference to the fact that the Pride of Raven had an influence on them, and that's got to be a good thing.
No, definitely. And when you look where they've become,
Absolutely,
in terms of the
yeah.
effort they've put on and stuff, But again, it's a band with a long history and connection in terms of East Belfast. I mean, when you think of naming a few bands from East Belfast, the Ravens got to be one of the names that comes to people's minds straight away.
Indeed, indeed. As far, I mean, it's easy for me to blow the Ravens trumpet here very loudly.
Oh, me too, like.
But no, as far as I'm concerned, they've always been a band that's played good music, and we've turned our repertoire over and over and over. There's lots of marches that we played that we've got rid of that I would love to bring back again, but
that's another episode. So
yeah, that would take some time.
Yeah. No, so let's maybe delve into the reason that we're here, which is to have a conversation around the whole idea of the Belfast International Tattoo. So just open it up for both of you. How did that invite come your way? Maybe start talking about maybe some of the thoughts that came your way in regards to whenever you were approached about taking part.
If I can go first, William, if you don't mind. I've always felt that the Raven would have been capable of doing the Belfast International Tattoo, but I didn't want to chase an invite on that. And it was how it came about. We got involved was I had been asked by Nigel Edgar, who is the director of music for the mass flute bands and for the flute bands or any bands that's taken part in the tattoo, to help him out with a practice area for last year's participants, Ballywalter and
what do you call it? I know who you're talking about.
I had it's escaping
Kelswater.
That's it. Thanks very much. I'm old now. I just forget. So he'd asked me to arrange a common practice area for them because they were coming from different distances. So with my connections in Ballymacar district, Orange Hall, I got the use of the ballroom for them to practice. And after 2 or 3 practices, I attended because I like listening to the music. Nigel came up to me and said, "Do you think the Raven would be interested in doing the tattoo?" And I nearly fell off the seat.
So this was like a year before?
Absolutely. I mean, I was completely aware of it before anybody in the band was. And it gave me time to think. Plenty of time to think. Now, I did impart the information to senior officers in the band, but I told them to sit on it because I was quite aware that there would have been a lot of members. I was fully confident that the band could do it, but I was fully aware that, I mean, at the end of the day, it's a voluntary thing.
Yeah.
And we had done major things in the past, and this was going to be the pinnacle. So I don't want to exhaust all the reasons, but that's how it came about.
Okay, so we're talking about by trying to help Nigel Edgar out in terms of practice area. There was the idea was floated.
It was indeed. He threw it out to me there, and so.
Well, we'll pick that up in a wee minute too. William, where did you come? Because obviously you weren't down in the practices with Kelswater, etc. How did you end up getting invited?
So I suppose, well, through Nigel Edgar as well, I got in touch with one of the other fellows in our committee to see, I suppose, testing the water to see if it would be something we'd be interested in doing. Name drop the Raven as a potential band to do it with. So I suppose like once the rest of the committee were informed, we were all straight away on for doing it. As Nigel says, when you're looking at the bigger picture and you have maybe upwards of 40 members in the band, and you're as much as you want to go ahead and steamroll and say yes, we'll do it, you have to consult the rest of the fellas in the band and make sure that there's the will for everybody, because there's a big commitment at the end of the day. But I guess it wasn't even something that was on our radar. With only transitioned, as I say, a number of years to a melody band, for us, we still have a lot of things that we want to do and achieve, and including just our general playing and that. And it probably was something that was maybe a number of years off for us. But whenever we get asked to do it, you're not going to turn down that opportunity, because you don't know when you might get the opportunity to come around again.
Yeah. So then I suppose that leads us nicely in, and I suppose for a question for both of you, says, well, whenever you did actually then present it to your band, what was the response?
I have to say there was quite a debate within the Ravens, so there was about it. A lot of guys were afraid. I think that's the best word. Were afraid. Other guys said, I'll do it if the band decides to do it, but I'm not happy about doing it. And I possibly was, I wouldn't say a bully, but I was driving this because I was trying to suggest. You're laughing there. Do you think it was a bully, by the way, about the whole thing?
No,
No, I was anxious to push the Raven forward, to be honest with you. I mean, we'd done plenty of things in the past that I felt were worthy. We'd done Lichfield twice at the National Arboretum. We've done the Ulster Hall twice prior to that. We had done the Somme Battlefields in 2016 for the 100th anniversary. I mean, those are all prestigious events, but as far as I was concerned, the Tattoo would have topped it all. And there were some great bands that went before us, and I was really pleased that Nigel had considered the Pride of the Raven to be worthy of taking part in the 2024 Belfast International Tattoo. Yes, it was difficult, but at the end of the day, the band made the decision to go for it. There were members there that were afraid, but we'll come to that later, how that developed.
But I think it's important that, like you both were saying that in terms of how bonds operate, we're quite democratic in terms of the approaches that we take. We do take time to get people say in regards to what's the opinion here, and going and trying to get a general consensus of where people are at. There's nothing ever really forced on a bond to some degree. You know what I mean? There is a lot of democratic chat around here. What do we do, or what way do we take this forward?
I wouldn't have driven it with them if I didn't have thought that would have been able to do it.
Yeah.
I was very confident, but I had to manage it,
Yeah.
and I think I managed it quite well. To be honest with you, Graham.
I think when we get into the idea of exploring the experience and stuff, we'll see that that's the case. Well, what do we do? What kind of reception in the end did this get? Once it went from sort of a couple of people in your committee and then went to the wider band, how did it go down?
Yeah, overall went down well. I mean, we called a meeting. Our AGM's usually at the start of the year, and we called one earlier, round about, I suppose this time last year, end of October, early November, and the purpose of that was to sort of inform the fellas as a group, and to sort of see there and then what the general perception was. Now, we're quite fortunate as a band that we've got quite a lot of youth in the band. I suppose that maybe brings a wee bit of naivety as to what you're potentially getting involved into.
Okay.
And I would say probably there's a lot of people maybe, or some of the younger ones maybe committed to doing it on the excitement of doing it, maybe not knowing exactly what they were getting into, probably never been at the tattoo before themselves. But overall, I mean, I suppose with any bands looking 12 months down the road, you're always maybe anxious about committing to something like that, because you don't know what happens in the interim period. And as I say, you're banking on having a certain number of drummers, certain number of fluters, and whenever you commit to doing the tattoo, you're having to see that through. So,
Yeah.
but overall, as I say, I can't. Thankfully, there was nobody that came to us and says I don't want to do it. And there's a couple of fellas who were out of the country at the time that we knew fairly early on couldn't do it, but you're able to work around that and sort of plan accordingly.
Yeah. So you're talking a good year or a wee bit more. It's been over a year, wasn't it, in terms of whenever the invites arrived, wasn't it? It was just I think it was maybe 14, maybe 15 months away or something.
It was quite informal. Nigel's a brilliant guy, so he is, but he's that laid back, he's near horizontal. So he is. He's a super guy, and I don't think he'll be worried about me saying that about him. Yeah, that length of time gave us the opportunity, and give me the opportunity, and the senior officers, because there's a lot of the guys, as much as I said there was guys afraid, there was other guys very, very excited about it as well. I was completely confident that we would have been capable of doing it, and it was brilliant that I had that one-to-one with Nigel Edgar, because we were able to influence him and influence the organisers to allow the two bands to play their own set pieces, rather than a full set piece all the way through, which is what had been arranged previously for the two-part music bands in the previous tattoo. So that was exciting too, you know.
No, it was good. So let's kind of bring that forward a bit. So you've got the invitation, the bands have agreed, yes, we're going to go and do this. How did you start preparing for this? Because obviously, I know that at the starting stage, there was nothing really on the table from those guys in regards to what tunes might be being played. So initially, there's a blank canvas here to some degree. That obviously changes, at some point. But talk to us a bit about how you started to prepare the band, even that far out. What did that start to look like for you?
Well, listen, from our point of view, sort of from the off the 2024 season, sort of over that winter time last year, while we were kind of still waiting to find out what way the music element was going to go, we put a lot of focus into just what we were playing on the road and making sure that everybody was up to scratch, that everybody was starting off at the same level. So once the tattoo music would come out, everybody would be at the same point to sort of dive into it and go from there. So we probably spent then from November right through till March, April time, really hammering our existing music, which once we sort of hit the road, we've seen the benefit of straight away and seen that throughout the whole year. So that was kind of the first part of it. I suppose maybe moving on a wee bit further then, I know some of the fellas out of the committee of the Raven invited us up to the club to sort of sit down and go through some of the music, to try out our flutes, to make sure tuning wise and that we were all in the same boat. Thankfully that went well, and then I suppose as a bit of a trial run, we had earmarked the Pride of the Hills parade.
We did.
Back in the middle of June, as an opportunity for the both bands to get together and be involved and meet each other. And there was 7 or 8 pieces of music that both bands played. I think it was very successful.
It worked very well, so it did.
Probably better than what we thought was going to turn out, so.
It was really enjoyable, to be honest with you, and especially such a large band when the two bands got together.
I know the only thing that wasn't enjoyable was that blue hill.
Well, my lungs are still on it, so find them,
But
please.
Nigel, let's obviously from Moneyslane's perspective. What about for the Raven? Because it took a wee while for things to kind of G up a wee bit, didn't it?
Well, until such times as we got the music from Nigel of what we were going to be playing, I think we concentrated on what we were going to play as a band at the Tattoo. And we were very lucky in that we were learning a new march. It was just really, really good for the Tattoo, and that was Normandy Veterans. So we had a bit of a head start with that one. What we wanted to do was keep that march for the Tattoo. We sort of decided we wouldn't play it out on the road and give anybody any idea, and we concentrated on that during our practice until we got the actual music from the Tattoo. As William says, we had arranged to meet. We made sure the flutes tuned, because that was in my head. What happens if the flutes didn't tune, etc. And again, we paraded in Rathfriland. We played 5 or 6, maybe 7 marches that the both bands played. Worked really, really well, and I think it helped our guys settle down a lot more, to be honest with you, because they realised, look, we can walk as a large band between the two bands, and everybody carried themselves very, very well. So that and that helped boost the confidence. But I didn't want to push them too hard in terms of, guys, we need to do this and need to do the other. The only problem I had from the Ravens' point of view, it was such a busy year for us, because they'd already planned to do the Battlefield tour again in France and Belgium, and into the bargain we got a very late invite to go to Scotland, which the majority of the band went to Scotland as well, so that all had to be fitted in. But thankfully everything came together really, really well.
Where did that make a change? Because obviously as you're starting to think about, because I remember we had a small type of a set, it's like kind of going, here's some stuff we possibly might be able to do, and we were starting to try and concentrate on that. But when did that change for you? Because obviously, up until the music comes out from the arrangements that Nigel then sends through, that kind of changed things a wee bit, didn't it? For both of us.
Yeah, well, I wasn't able to go to that, but there was a combined practice up with yous.
That's right.
It was around June, July time, something like that. That's sort of whenever the music first came. Well, I think we've all had a couple of weeks maybe to look over the stuff before we came together. And Nigel, he was there that night as well, Nigel Edgar.
That's right. We held that in the Orange Hall too, didn't we?
Yeah.
We held that in the Orange Hall.
So what was that like for you? Because obviously, the pieces there that they ended up picking out initially, I know for me on First Class, I was glad to see some music was great. But on First Class, like kind of going, right, there's some interesting choices here in regards to what was being played and how it was being played. I think was probably
There was never any doubt that we were going to have to play what the musical director had written out. The difficulty I had was to make sure that we were interpreting that music properly, and that the guys, not all our guys read music, so it has to be transposed into notation for them. There's a good lot of us can read music. I can read music, but I can't play to it. So I would transpose it into notation for them. That's what they know, and that's how we learned the tune.
yeah.
At the end of the day, at the tattoo, nobody was reading any music at all. It was all put into memory. So we transitioned that. Getting back to the start of your question, yes, we had set pieces that we wanted to play as a band, but then word came back that there was a certain amount of time that was being shaved off what we were given, so we had to change again. That upset the guys because they were set in their ways. We were going to be playing another tune after, etc. So that upset them a wee bit, but we just had to manage it. It was all about man management. I think if the tattoo people had to give us a heads up right from the very start, we would have been much better prepared. However, I have to say, at the end of the day, it turned out an absolute resounding success.
Yeah, no, and we'll definitely get into that. But what about for yourselves? Where did the shift happen for you guys? Because obviously, you were saying, you put some time and effort into what you're currently doing on the road. Was the shift whenever that music came your way and went, right, this requires X amount of commitment for us? How did that change for you in regards to time, effort, hours, etc.?
Well, I think the first piece that came through was When Johnny Comes Marching Home, which I suppose it's not too difficult. And sort of on the first night of sitting down with the fellas to play it, the vast majority of the fellas got through it no problem. Mixed March was a different kettle of fish and took several weeks to get it up to speed. But I suppose it's just, as Nigel touched on there, is whenever you're telling the fellas this is what we're doing, it's kind of like it's a bit like when the rifles landed in Dad's army. You know, it's like that's what you're waiting for. Like, you know, so.
What do we do with these?
But it was nice to actually have some, and there was a few tweaks and changes in different versions of it and copies and things like that. And then there's also the interpretation too. So I think whenever we first met up from that, it was making sure, for example, that the seconds was playing the same thing and the same rhythm and things like that. So there's a few wee bits and pieces to iron out, but I think overall both bands seemed to take that very quickly.
Yeah, it worked out very, very well.
Yeah, no, it did. And then there was an obvious wrap up whenever it came to, I suppose for me, whenever I started thinking about it, like post July, things really started to come to the fore in regards to, hey, folks, this isn't a kick in the teeth away. We really need to be buckling down in regards to how did you handle that in terms of practices? Because I know for us, Nigel, that ended up meaning there was more practices being organised.
There was indeed. Now we practice a full practice on a Sunday evening, and we also have a practice on a Tuesday night, more so for learners, but we used the Tuesday night as well, and we operated a couple of other practice nights because you're trying to work around guys who are working 12-hour shifts. Two of our main drummers were working 12-hour shifts 6 days a week, and to get them to not only practicing the music, but we also had marching practice as well to do because our routines had to be organised. So we were well into that. Plus you're in the middle of the marching season and there's so many events to go to. Plus we were going to France and Belgium, so I had to worry about that. But they buckled down and yes, there was times whenever we were low in numbers and people were saying, you can't do this because he's not standing there and he's not standing there. Oh, you know all about it.
Yeah, no, it was because I know that was one of things because you get all those questions and stuff, and it was like, right, we were heading around the wee Nellfield pitch, and you're trying to walk around and you're going, hey, might get into your eights, and you're like looking and going, there's like 9 flutes, do you know what I mean? Here now you get into the eights and when you walk up with 9 flutes and stuff. But what about you? When did you start that ramp up post July or?
Yeah, I suppose maybe once we got the 12th and 13th of July over, it probably near more hit us whenever we realised how many weeks we had left to go. And at that stage, we hadn't had any sort of, we hadn't even really put a drill together or in place. So at that point, it sort of hit us what we still had to do. And in terms of like practices and that, well, we practiced Monday night and everything to do with the road, just that was put to the side, and it was all to do with practicing over the music for Tattoo. And then, as Nigel says, whenever We got the drill put in place. There was separate nights for that. The drummers had a separate night to go through their drum salute and things like that. And you're kind of balancing, as well as having your practice on the Monday night that the majority of people could go for it was, well, what other night this week suits? Is a Friday. We even done a few Saturday afternoons after 3 o'clock for a few hours as well. So it's really just, you had to get as many people there as possible to make it work.
Yeah.
And one of the things I even found was whenever you were doing it just as your own band, and we had plotted the size of the arena out in the Free Presbyterian Church car park beside the hall, and you kind of guessed where the tune would finish, but whenever you added in yourselves, it never went, or you never finished where you thought you were going to finish. So that's why the combined practices were really the most beneficial, because as long as you had a rough idea in your head of what was happening, it wasn't those Monday nights that both bands came together that you really sort of understood what was going on.
Yeah. Because you're trying to work on separate routines, and then you have the fact that there's joint routines in terms in the middle of that as well. One of the things that raises then is logistical challenges. So in terms of getting times and stuff that work for people, how did you handle that? I feel like a fraud asking these questions. I know the answers to them.
I actually felt sorry for Moneyslane because they were going to have to come to Belfast no matter what.
Yeah.
I think the halfway point was the Hillsborough.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you just pulled out all the stops there and got that car park, which worked absolutely brilliant. There was a few screaming skulls, I have to say, so there was. Absolutely. I mean, it wasn't painless, this.
No.
It certainly wasn't painless. But no pain, no gain.
Well, this is it.
If you're going to do do it right, put the effort in. Yes, there was times whenever X, Y, and Z members weren't there, but you have to cater for that.
Yeah.
You have to cater for that. And some other guys weren't, in our band anyway, weren't content with the position that they were in. So I had to manage them too, to make sure that they were in a better position, that they would have been able to do the drill that we had worked out.
Yeah.
And we all know George McMaster sorted out the majority of it with a great deal of help. We had that night were you there, down in Banbridge?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And what do you call the guy?
Paul Carson.
Absolutely brilliant. PowerPoint setup, everything. And these crown counter marches, and he pasted out and all. And Geordie just took that from Paul, and it fitted in beautiful. But
getting there was
a bit of a nightmare. And if anybody's doing it, you do have to put the work in. You really, really do. Now, I did speak to the like of James Miller, who was an ex-member of the Miller Memorial, who had done it previously, and he left me in no doubt. Nigel, he said, it takes an effort. It takes an effort, but you will reap the benefit.
Because I think that's where it really hit the fan for me. I know that there was, whenever you started, it was one thing walking together as a band, when we did the Prayer to the Hills parade. It was one thing doing that, but whenever you were going and doing a separate kind of drill, and then coming together and trying to put it and then you're like, because I'm looking at when the dates that we had for the joint marching practice, and you're talking like 3 or 4 of these things.
It was 3.
It was 3, wasn't it? Yeah. Before we actually were like going to a final dress rehearsal, and I remember being like kind of going, one of those practices were like going, you're being told, right, so whenever you do this, you're going to march out of them, and not being told while you're stepping left or going right or anything, and then walking out of a band and going, like, I'm going, where did everybody who was standing beside me like disappear to? Do you know what I mean? So it became a real, like, the communication thing became a real necessity in terms of like, you need to boil down this, because I have to say, for me, that was the only thing that really started to stress me out. It wasn't the music side of things, it was the marching thing, and the display stuff really started to get to me, and like kind of going, someone needs to go through this with me, and like, where am I going? If I do this, where am I going next? Because this just expecting me to work out where I'm going is not working for me at all. Like, you know what I mean?
I have to say, there was an awful lot of emphasis put onto the drummers. I mean, the fluters had it easy because all they were doing was following the man in front. But I'm not afraid to say it. The Moneyslane's first row of drums, then the Pride of the Raven was the next row of drums. So an awful lot of emphasis was put on the Moneyslane's drummers, and they ponied up, didn't they? Really ponied up, and everybody ponied up, to be honest with you. But the effort that was put in certainly reaped benefits.
So there was moments during that preparation, so whenever routines were supposedly made, and then all of a sudden, folks, scrap that, we're gonna do something else. How did you handle that whole idea of the getting feedback from, obviously there was times that the staff from the tattoo were watching some of the things that were going on, and they were like giving, because you could hear from a back, the dressing's terrible here, the lane is terrible, you can't really be doing this, you need to make changes this, and then there was like a huddle, and then it was like, here's what we're doing now. What kind of impact did that have? Because I know for me, I think kind of going, right, what's changing now? Like, you know what I mean?
I think one of the biggest issues was just standing about in general. It seemed that now you obviously like Jordy and all who was and Sam Baxter who was taking a lot to do with getting the thing up and going during the practices in Hillsborough. For the rest of us standing at the back of the band, like you could have stood maybe 20 minutes between doing a tune, or a routine. I was trying to keep the fellas, concentrating and up to speed during that time. Inevitably, there's a certain amount of that you need to do before you can walk through it from start to finish. But I think that was probably the biggest challenge.
It was. It was difficult for me to keep my mouth shut, to be honest with you. But I felt horses for courses. The drum majors, Sam Baxter and George, are well aware of what needs to be done. So I tended to leave it to them. There was opinions being aired, and I tried to say, guys, knock it in the head. These are the guys that's arranging it. Let them get it sorted. And I kept my powder dry. And yes, it was touchy. It was very touchy at times, and we had to be respectful because of where we were, and I was worried about that. But in the end, it worked out. Yes, it was painful.
And how do you feel you kept people's morale high at that stage? Because there's barely been times whenever they walked away from those joint marching practices and went, what on earth are we doing? Like, because I'm sure there was a few people ready to, I know there was a few people ready to throw the hair up and go, that's it. I'm not doing this.
Tallies were through the proms left, right, and centre, so they were. But it's like everything else. It boils down to it's about man management. Guys, settle down. It'll work out. Have confidence. It'll work. Don't worry. But nothing. Relax. It'll work out. We'll just have to keep at this. It'll come together. Let Jordy work it out. Jordy was like a screaming skull. He'll admit that himself. But in the end, absolutely brilliant.
I think you could see the improvement sort of after each practice. So I think that in itself was probably, I know I felt every time I was there, I came away with a routine a wee bit more in my head, and especially the first night, you thought that you had the music learnt in your head, and then once you stepped out to do a routine, you were barely playing half the tune. You were trying to work out where you were, and doing both at the same time was difficult. But I think after the first night, you felt that wee bit more confident, and it sort of built on that. So I think the longer it went on, guys kind of seen that there was what they were being told to do was actually working.
That's a very good point, Liam. By the way, I have to be honest. Even when we were doing our own marching practice at Nettlefield School, trying to concentrate on what you're supposed to do marching meant you forgot what you were trying to be playing, what you were playing, and then you felt inadequate. Oh, flip me! I thought I had this tune off by heart, and you were concentrating that much on your marching, and then of course our counter marching, we were counter marching to the right. We had practice. And then it was counter marching to the left. So we agreed to go all go to the left.
And stuff there as well. So and that's the other thing that I think that people don't maybe take into consideration, and the fact when you do bring two bands together, while they're from a similar genre in terms of the marching band scene, that some things were done quite differently. I think one of the things that, and you'll maybe back me up here in regards to this, one of the things that I think I really picked up from Moneyslane was they were so well drilled in regards to how they stood, where your arms and stuff come up, and when they raised their flutes and stuff. And for us, that was maybe a wee bit, what's going on here? Like,
I thought it was very, very smart, and I'll be honest with you. And we've taken that on board since the tattoo. We always brought our flutes up after the first 5-beat roll, but I think you bring them up at the start of the second 5-beat roll. Just that slight wee delay. And also, it's like a 1-2 after the tune's finished and then flutes down type of thing. That's smart. And they're straight as dice. I mean, I'm naturally round-shouldered, and I've felt myself trying to straighten up, to be honest with you. I've walked for 50 years the way I've walked, but I was so proud.
No, but it does have that kind of impact on it.
Absolutely.
Was there anything you think that Moneyslane picked up from in terms of practicing alongside the Raven? Because obviously we were saying, like, we seen that, that. And like almost cast iron, like this is how we do things.
I think one of the things that struck me was just even like getting to the likes of Nigel and that, and fellas obviously there's a lot of fellas in the Raven that's a lot more experienced and had a lot more marching years behind them than most of the fellas in our band. So I suppose even just hearing, different opinions on their side of things. And obviously the Raven have a piccolo, which we don't play on the road at the minute. So just wee bits and pieces like that, that I think we picked up. And again, as I say, I think that's how both bands gel, because we're able to take those wee bits and pieces away from each other.
Yeah, no, definitely I think it worked. It started to blend in really, really well. So as you're heading towards, we're heading towards the final rehearsals, right? Or the final rehearsal, and the dress rehearsal is not that far away from that there. What's going through your mind, Nigel, in regards to the lead up to that? Because I know that's where maybe for some people, that's where some nerves maybe started to kick in a wee bit. They kind of going, hey, this is becoming real now.
At that stage, I was worried about dropouts. I was worried about guys coming to me and saying, this is really not for me. This is not for me. Thankfully, it didn't happen. In actual fact, it turned around, excuse me, because our main bass drummer, who is an experienced flute player, so he was, and also a side drummer, felt his health wasn't enough for him to carry the bass drum. And he ended up playing the drum, which brought us up to the 8 drummers, which was brilliant. Then I had the worry of, excuse me, our new bass drummer, who literally walked in off the street about 14 months, maybe less, before the tattoo, hadn't a clue about playing the bass drum. And Stevie he stepped up to the plate and he pulled us out of a major hole, and he done absolutely brilliant, I think, and he's well worthy of mention. Yeah, can I go back a wee bit, Glenn, for 1 minute? I think I sold the Raven a wee bit short in terms of our marching. We have instilled a lot of discipline over this past few years, and prior to the tattoo, we have always, every season, had marching practice of some sort. Yeah. Yeah. And basically it was to try and make our turns more sharper, the inside man more or less marking time, the outside man opening his pace, to bring the line round equally. We've worked hard on that, and we've developed our marching much better. So we have.
Well, and I think that because you can develop bad habits and stuff, because people are, you remember saying, you've got years and years of experience. People are used to doing things certain ways, and I think that the combination of the fact that was headed in that direction, plus the precision that was required for the tattoo, really started to drill that down into some of the guys. That they going, listen, you just can't take this, whatever pace you want to. You are going to have to, even where you're dressing from, like we're going, everyone was now dressing from the center rather than from their left, all these kind of things.
Right. That's right.
There was lots of changes that started to happen. Do you find that honed Moneyslane as well? Do you find that ongoing, constantly addressing stuff really hammered things home to your guys?
Yeah, well, I suppose if you take like any ordinary band parade on a Friday or Saturday night, I mean, nobody's perfect from start to finish, whether it be the playing or, we'll miss the odd mark time or things like that there. But I think as it drew closer, there was the reality that there's 3 performances, but when you're on that, you only have 1 shot to do that particular action, play that tune, make that movement. And it was just drilling into the guys, practice, go home and even have it in your head what comes next, and trying to see if we could even push for an extra practice during the week, things like that. But definitely as we got closer, I think everybody started to realise that, what is required to pull this off, basically, and everybody wanted to go out, didn't want to be the one to make a mistake or that. So I think everybody had the right attitude going into it.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think where for me was that final, that dress rehearsal.
Well, I was waiting for you to come to that dress rehearsal, because that's the
like here you go here.
that dress rehearsal threw a spanner in the works immediately, didn't it?
Yeah,
didn't it?
It did.
And I thought to myself, how are we going to get around this? And I said, I'll leave it to Jordy.
Mm-hmm.
I'll leave it to Jordy. And Jordy and the guy had a chat on how the band was going to break up after we come out, because we were coming on to open up out into 8s.
Mm-hmm.
And then after doing what we were doing, the Raven had to filter out of Moneyslane and come into 4s, and you yourselves had to shuffle in.
Yeah.
And then we had to go and separate it into half a band on either side of the arena at the exit end. And I said, to tell us to do all this on the dress rehearsal, I said to myself, this is going to be, Jory, sort it out, please. Jory, and stay calm. The more upset you're going to get, the more upset it's going to breed amongst the band members. And yes, there was in the changing room. I mean, we were herded in there like sardines, weren't we?
All right.
But it worked.
Yeah,
it worked.
It did. It got there, didn't it? And I mean, and I think that that's where reality hit home as well. You know, like even right up to the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the night before the first performance, because that's the Thursday night was the dress rehearsal. The first performance is the Friday night, and even then, right up to that point, there's changes being made,
Mm-hmm.
and trying to handle all of those is difficult. So let the dress rehearsal, obviously we get there in the end because we only you'd one. It was like, you know, one shot, like an M&M thing. There was only one shot, and that was it.
Well, the funny thing about it was all verbal.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do, guys,
Yeah.
without even actually practicing it. We'll go out and we'll do this. And both bands know the mace commands.
Yeah.
George's mace commands were outstanding, so they were. And you were constantly watching with the mace going up for a mace halt, for a stop, etc., etc. And just to go out and do that at that dress rehearsal and make that work after all those twists and turns was brilliant.
Something else, I know that
It was.
But I think even whenever you got a chance to see some of the other acts at their dress rehearsal too, and then like the grand finale, and at times you kind of sort of thought to yourself, you know, not just our bands, but the whole thing, you kind of felt like it maybe wasn't fully polished. And at times I was surprised how it went so well on each of the performances, you know, especially the grand finale now, because there's so much going on. But it
doesn't really much to do with the grand finale.
Funny enough, you should mention that grand finale. I thought it was brilliant. I tell you, from the point of view, it was the dress rehearsal, and the way we'd come on to the left-hand side of that Dutch Liberation Band, you should come on to the right-hand side of it, and in that wee German band, don't ask me to pronounce the name of them, but they were like a wee German corps of drums, so they were. So the dress rehearsal was going on that much. Everybody was fed up, giving it, you know, standing like pokers. So when they were doing all the songs, the girls out of the German band, or our guys started sort of walking, dancing around the bass drum, for want of a better word, and they joined in, and I think that helped relax all those people, because the ones that were joining in were the ones that were giving us most grief. And it was brilliant. So it was
good crack. So
it was less regimented, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, you got it, because when you went in on that you know, the sort of with that finale thing, when it was for real on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I think that was the most taxing part of the whole thing, was standing at attention for that duration of time, you know, and trying not to move. It gave me a wee bit of, for me, it gave me a wee bit more respect even for the likes of military bands, at the likes of Troop and the Colour and all this kind of stuff, having to stand for hours on end at attention and stuff, and then you kind of going, oh, what are you doing, fall about and all that there. It's not easy just to be standing still for a length of time, is it?
What encouraged me was the fact that we'd carried off the performance so well. And I had every right to be standing there and every right to be as proud as I was.
No. So, in terms of then, because that's us right up to the point of, hey, the arena's empty, we've got through this. Friday is, the next day is D-Day to some degree here, we need to be doing this. Try and sum up some of the thoughts that you may have had, either on the day and the lead up to that, because I know for a lot of us, obviously, there was work and stuff, and then trying to make sure you were down at the arena for, I think it was around about 60s or something, wasn't it, when we needed to get down for, and then going on, because it's not all champagne and roses kind of thing, you know, you get this idea of backstage at a big event and all this kind of stuff. There's no real glory in it whatsoever. It's, you know, as you were saying about the changing rooms, you're herded in. There's like fucking, what, 70, 80 of us in the room, you know, and then there's one toilet being shared between everybody in that area as well. You know, it was try and talk to us a wee bit about what the actual, on the day, that Friday was like for you.
Oh, well, for me it was terrible. For me it was terrible, because are all my guys going away in here tonight? That was my first worry. Is X, Y, and Z going to get out of work early to be able to be down, etc.? I'm always very prompt no matter where I go. And I
there from 2 o'clock.
I felt I was going to be first there, but I wasn't. When I walked into that changing room, the biggest concern for my guys was there's only one rack to hang your uniform on. That was their biggest concern. So I had to go running, asking, pleading to get another rack for to hang their uniforms on. Now all the guys weighed in, and that was me. Right, just get this first performance over. All the guys are here. They're staying here. There's no contraband in their bags, for instance. They've got their polish with them. They've got X, Y, and Z. Crack on.
Yeah.
So that was my worry. I was just
Okay.
Yeah, well, I think even just from the start of the day, the band WhatsApp was just going nuts the whole day, the whole afternoon, and some of the fellas had booked the day off or got like a half day in that, and there's a load of fellas that got up there early, so you could tell there was a real sort of excitement about it. I suppose one of the things you referred to there with the rack, Nigel, was you got to keep your uniform there the whole time. You know, so you brought your gear for the dress rehearsal, all your stuff was there. So for like myself coming from work in Dundonald, you know, you just had to get yourself there on time, not have to worry about bringing anything out, and on the Saturday as well. So I mean, it felt a wee bit surreal, especially landing down at the Odyssey and realising that was the start of it for real. And then on the Friday night, Moneyslane played outside, the Saturday afternoon the Raven played outside. So especially on that Friday night, having to get there a wee bit earlier to make sure you were there and on you to march out to the front to play as people were walked in. So it added another element to it as well.
Yeah. So let's bring it to, because there's a lot of waiting around. That's the other thing. We were talking about waiting around whenever we were doing our own type of rehearsals. There's a lot of waiting around this time around because the bands weren't on until the second half of the program. And literally once we kind of finished our performance, it was get back straight round to the loading area, I suppose, and then be ready to come back out for the grand finale. But what I want to try and get into some kind of sense is, in that position when you're getting ready to go out and that, you know, that curtain's about to lift and we're standing and starting to come into those ranks in terms of, right, we're now about to hit the floor here. You know, and this is about to happen for real. What's going through your mind? What's going through your mind as you're in that place? Because there's lots of milling about has been done, and now you're right here. This is it.
I think I was buzzing for it. I think I actually felt more nervous for the dress rehearsal,
Right.
And getting that out of the way. The first performance on the Friday night. I suppose different people deal with it in different ways. There were a few fellas that went upstairs to watch the performance up to that point. There's a few fellas were ready for it and they were standing at the entrance into the arena for about an hour before they were due to go in, you know. So it was just, I suppose, making sure everybody was there first of all. But whenever you heard, you know, the
accordion plants coming down in, wasn't it?
I heard that,
and then there was that wee jokey bit,
and then the solo for you Alvin on the flute.
At the start of it.
It's whenever the Matthew and the drum and Alvin on the piccolo kicked in, that's when you really felt it, because you were just waiting for the curtain to go up and walk out, you know.
Yeah. Nigel, what was that like for you?
I have to say, I was very confident, but I think my nerves were bust because I was worried more about the rest of the guys in the band. Yeah. I was certainly very confident about what was going to happen. I was just worried about where they're going to fall into place, where they're going to march out into the right place, etc., etc. You know, once we marched out into the arena, I think the excitement just took us over. The crowd really welcomed us. So they did, and definitely. I felt, here's me. No, this is no problem here. We're gonna smash this.
Yeah. Plus, in that moment, you only can look after yourself anyway. Yeah. No amount of worrying about somebody else is going to change what somebody does. You just have to try and focus and keep yourself right.
I'm a born warrior, William. I worry all the time.
But there was a real, for me, there definitely was that sense of tension that was there before you walked out onto the, in terms of the arena itself. That for me was palpable. You could feel that in the air, regardless of what else might have gone before. You just knew, hey, something's about to happen here, and there's not much else we can do now. Everything else has been done. It's up to us to pull this off now.
I felt I had a responsibility to make sure I wasn't going to fall apart, if you want, for a better word. I had to lead from the front as far as I was concerned, although I was walking at the back, you know what I mean? And I didn't want the other guys to feel my anxiety and my worry. And my worry is for none. Where is the interest you pay on something that hasn't happened yet? And certainly with regards to that. My mother taught me that we saying years ago, so she did. But as soon as we went through that gate, I said to myself, this is going to work. This is going to work. Absolutely no problem.
Do you feel the atmosphere that was generated that had an impact as well?
I certainly do. I believe it had an impact.
Yeah, I mean, like even just I suppose for that wee intro part of when Johnny comes marching home with the crowd clapping to the beat, you could find it just as you walked out into that, you know, sort of the echo of that round the hall.
Yeah.
It's obviously not something that you can replicate when you're doing practice. But there's almost like an expectation, and because you have so many acts from across the world, you kind of feel like you're there and you have to put on a performance,
Yeah.
you know, to your local,
Yeah.
a lot of family and friends in the audience as well. You don't want to let the Northern Ireland side of it down, you know.
Yeah.
I
No,
think-
you're right.
I felt Moneyslane had all their relatives there on a Saturday because he's got quite a cheer on a Saturday, so he did.
I thought I got the best cheer every year.
Did yeah.
There we go. There's no rivalry happening here. Like, we put the two bonds together. No, but there definitely was because I was sitting. We were sitting listening to you there talking. And I can almost get the sense of that response whenever the bond just split off, coming out through that the narrow opening, and you could just sense that you could almost sense that for me was that the crowd had been waiting on the flute bonds all night. That's the sense that I had. I really felt that they've been waiting on us, and that's no slight on the accordions or anything like that there, but I think that there was definitely an anticipation of the two bonds coming out, and I felt that walking out through the gate. Like,
That's a good point. I never thought of it that way before, but certainly when you say that now, I would have to agree with you.
yeah, no, definitely for me it was a moment when because you could just I felt that, but it's hard to kind of do it because, for me that something definitely changed when we walked through that. There's something definitely
There was
happened
almost like an expectation.
Yeah.
I suppose if you look at tattoos in general, a lot of time it comes like core drums and that to sort of put on a bit of a show where it be either a teen and things like that. So, but I think again it comes down to a lot of the local, the vibe of it too. You kind of felt that there was a lot of people. Obviously, you've people on social media and that, and you see people going that's in other bands and that, and you're thinking, we need to put on a show here, we need to look the part, you know, we can't look any different from any of the acts that do this regularly at tattoos, you know. So it was about sort of stepping up to the mark and making sure we didn't done ourselves justice, you know, that sort of way.
Certainly did.
No,
Certainly
I
did.
definitely did. You know what I mean? And what was your immediate thoughts potentially after the performance happened? Because for me, it just seemed to just go like that.
The Friday night or all the whole thing.
The Friday night, just about.
Well, what was it 18 minutes?
Yeah.
18 minutes. That felt like two.
It didn't
Felt
feel
like
it
two.
was long at all. Like, sure didn't.
I don't know if that's where because we enjoyed it or what it was.
Well, I have to be honest, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So
Yeah.
that, especially whenever we were finishing the first performance, because we'd done it and we'd cracked it and we hadn't let ourselves down. But you're quite right.
It went.
Go on.
I actually think the Friday night was the best performance.
I was going to say it. I actually,
You
I
know,
think it was
out of the three of them.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because there wasn't really any hiccups on any of the nights, but I just kind of felt that first night it just seemed to click really well, all the turns and the movements and that.
But it
just seemed
lifted
to
a
work.
weight off everybody's shoulders, I think, because you have that going in, the sense of anticipation and the nerves, everything else is just and then you know that you've pulled it off. And it was just, for me, there's a real,
The human nature to say the first performance was the best performance, really. But
man, I just thought, I walked away thinking that after the three of them, and I thought the Friday night was the one that had the most attached to it in terms
I
of,
felt 8 foot tall walking off that parade.
I think it set you up for the Saturday because you fell into the Saturday then thinking, well, we've done it, we knocked it out of the park. There was nothing went wrong. The both bands sounded well together and apart.
yeah.
And I think it just filled you with confidence then for the remainder of the
And it
performance.
removes the mystery of the whole thing as well, because even though you had the dress rehearsal's nothing like a real thing. I mean, the mulling about and stuff like that. But knowing that there's going to be a crowd walking out into an empty arena, it was nice and all to be doing that. But when you're walking out and there's a crowd there, it's a completely different scenario.
I think what we achieved in the Friday night, given the fact that we threw so many curveballs on the dress rehearsal,
Yeah.
that we didn't really actually get doing it to the satisfaction of the both bands. And the Friday night was the actual
Dress
Dude.
rehearsal.
wasn't it really? To a certain extent.
Yeah, because it's the first time the routine was done as it was supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even with the changes the night before.
But there was a core atmosphere from the bands afterwards, whenever because obviously we split off on either side of the arena to come out. But when we come back together again, there was a real sense of, oh my God, we've just done this. There was a real buzz for both sets of both sets of memberships and stuff, wasn't there?
Yeah. I would say probably before the performance, the changing room was probably a wee bit quiet at times. Like there wasn't an awful lot of noise, but I think whenever like we could barely fit everybody in, but when everybody was in, it was so loud. Just everybody I think was congratulating each other.
The banter was good too. So
it was
it
good
was
banter,
good.
yeah.
It was good banter.
There was a bit of that. In terms of just your own thoughts and emotions post the three performances, how would you kind of sum those up, Nigel? Because I know for me, for our band, there was for me, the contrast between some of the concerns that were raised whenever the idea was first brought up to the range of emotion and the experience that people had afterwards was like chalk and cheese.
What filled me full of pride was the fact that guys at the very start of this who had said they weren't too happy about doing it, but the bands decided to do it, they'll do it anyway, turned around and in the end said that was absolutely brilliant. I am really pleased I done that. And that here's me. It just sort of rubber stamped my confidence that I put in them. Yeah. I mean, as I said at the very start, it's a voluntary it's a voluntary thing. And these guys were saying, look, all we want to do is just walk on the road, they don't want to, get pushed into that outside their comfort zone. Yeah. But every one of those guys that expressed their concern at it were buzzing about it, absolutely buzzing, and really pleased they'd done it.
Yeah. No, definitely.
Yeah, much the same as Nigel. I think whenever it was all over, I think we all looked back on it. There was obviously videos circulating on social media, and I think like one of the ones that the Belfast International Tattoo themselves have put up of both bands has nearly 400,000 views on it. So I think even just the coverage and that after, it nearly even made you more aware of what you actually had completed. And then a couple of weekends after the tattoo was our annual parade that you were up at supporting us. I think one of the big things for me was whenever you were going around the streets collecting, a lot of local people from the area were complimenting the band on how well we had done, which was nice to see because when you're from a certain area, you like to try and bring everybody with you, and it was good to see that a lot of the people from the district were there, enjoyed it, and was very complimentary of the band.
What about the wider band community? What kind of feedback have you got from the wider band community in regards to performances?
I think some of the comments that was put on, a lot of bands put comments on our Facebook page, congratulating us on what we had achieved. And there were some comments also. I mean, I used to be very envious of British Army Corps of Drums, but there were some comments coming from ex-military people to say, I wish the British Army could turn out Corps of Drums like that. Yeah. And that, to me, that just put the tin hat on it.
Comments like there was a lot of, and even just like personal messages, because I suppose like if you take our own band, for instance, we all know people in different bands throughout the country, so it was nice to get wee personal text messages and things like that. So even just sort of the highlight that both bands, the spotlight, maybe the best way to put it, that both bands got over that, and sort of even just the chat in general on social media about it. It was nice to sort of have that moment.
Yeah, it was indeed. I mean, one of the guys, after the three events were over, one of the guys made the comment, it's like taking your Christmas tree down after Christmas. You were...
Yeah.
And done and dusted after all that effort.
And it seems that when you think about it, you're talking about putting maybe 14, 15 months worth of preparation into something that literally went over in like about 45, 50 minutes. And when you think about that was the playing experience that we had at the tattoo was probably about that long.
That's right.
You know what I mean? I mean, it's a hell of a lot of effort to put in for what is essentially a short performance. What do you think is your bands are taking away from this? William, we'll start with you. What do you think Moneyslane is taking away from this experience? How has it added to you? How has it improved you?
Well, it's definitely improved us from a musical perspective, because we had that sort of over last winter, making sure everybody was up to speed. Yes, you can parade and walk past a crowd of people, but you don't really have an awful lot of spotlight or attention on you. Yeah. When you're in that arena and you have 4,000 people staring at you constantly, you have that extra attention, and you don't want to put a foot wrong. So I think it's probably brought everybody, even the more experienced members, maybe that wee bit more confident themselves ability wise as well, because the likes of Mixed March is a tough tune, so it's sort of pushing everybody musically as well. I suppose what maybe hope from it is maybe with the attention that it brought us, particularly in the local area, that it might inspire some young fellas to join the band, you know. So I think that's what we're maybe both hoping for, that we might get something like that out of it, you know.
Certainly, I would hope that it would encourage people to come down and join, because whilst you have a lot of youth on Moneyslane side, we have a lot of age, older members that, you know, if we suddenly start dropping away, it's going to put the band under a bit of pressure. But in the city, it's much more difficult, I believe, because especially in East Belfast, there's 5 recognised melody bands in East Belfast now, so there is, and young fellas are hard to encourage to come down. Last night was pleasing at our practice. We had one really young fella down who wants to learn to play the side drum. So yes, one of the main things from the tattoo for me, for our guys, was confidence. It's given them the confidence. They have done that. They can wear the t-shirt with pride now. So I'm hoping that they can take that same effort into what they've done for the tattoo with the music for the future and what we're trying to do with ourselves.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think for me, it's like it should open up, you know, a whole other realm of possibilities for, I suppose, maybe for both bands. You know, there's potentially there's nothing off limits for you, you know, in terms of what you can actually, what you can play, what you can achieve. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I would take away from the experience. You know, that there's, you know, for me, I have to say, from the Ravens' perspective, I'm only kind of going, I'm glad it happened, because for me, it was a push that potentially should have happened maybe 20 years ago, in terms of, and I swore there, sorry, but I was like kind of they pushing it forward, you know, because the talent's there, the talent's in the band.
The talent's always been in the band. The problem I've had is bringing them along with what I seen as a future for the band. Now, I do believe the band has improved immensely over this past even 5 years.
Yeah.
Over 20 years have improved, but see, this past 5-6 years, they've really, really improved.
There's been a massive shift, but I think for me, the impact of the tattoo for the band is it's a massive push forward in terms of quality. Because I think, and I'm sorry to turn this into almost a Raven loving here, but it's like, but I think that this year has been probably one of the best years that I've heard of the band. I have to say, it's been absolutely outstanding in terms of all the road performances and everything.
Absolutely. And I think the guys were taking the fact that they were practicing so hard for the tattoo. They were applying the ethos of the way they played that music to the way that they were. I mean, I'm forever at practices telling them, you know, this note, that note, etc., etc. Make sure you're holding that note out and you're not holding it out too long, etc., etc. You know, Alvin's very cautious about things like that too, and we try to get the drummers to be a wee bit more dynamic in their drumming. You know, phrase it properly, bring the rolls up, bring the rolls down, soften it, piano, etc., where it's meant to be. And everybody's taking a bit of that on board, and that's going to just keep building and building and building.
So in terms of maybe summing things up then, how would you summarize the entire journey then, if you were know, in terms of from preparation to final performance? How would you have summed this up in terms of your experience and I suppose the band's experience?
It was a long slog. It did put a lot of pressure on the band from different areas. But I think when you look back now, both at the time whenever you were doing the performances and after, it was definitely well worth it. I mean, I don't think there was any fella who did it in either band that would regret doing it, or didn't enjoy doing it. But I think whenever you had it done, yes, there was that sort of feeling of it being over, but there was also a relief that it was done well and how you wanted it to be carried out. But it was I think it's something that we'll all look back on in years to come and be proud that we were a part of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, very much so. Proud, you're 100% right. Very, very proud. It certainly was a challenge. From my point of view, there was a lot of man management involved from my point of view, because there were some people I had to encourage. There's some people I had to be cross with, if you want, for a better word. There were some people that just let them throw their teddies out of the pram and hope that they would come back after they'd done it. And you were there, you heard it all, you heard all the... But it was worth it. It was worth it. Yes, it's a hard slog. If there's any band listening into this that might be invited to do the tattoo in the future, grasp it, grasp the nettle. Put the effort in and it'll come off. We weren't the first bands to do this and will not be the last, but I would encourage you, if you are invited, grasp the nettle and take it. It's such a feeling, such a feeling.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think if anyone has the opportunity, they definitely should give it a whirl, because I think for me, just listening to both of you talk, but also having been through it, in terms out there, the benefit that it's brought to both bonds, I think it probably you won't be able to calculate the benefit that's brought to both bonds at this point in time. It'll be somewhere in the future that you'll recognize just exactly what this has meant to people. So, one of the things that you had mentioned about there was in regards to getting people to join. Now, obviously, there's quite a lot of people who watch the podcast and stuff. So you have an open platform here to put a what do you call it? A cry out to sort of say, listen, if you want to get involved with Moneyslane, how they're doing it, what do people need to do if they're in that area? What's your catchment area? What do they need to do to get involved with you? Just fire it out a wee recruitment.
Yeah. We'll practice every Monday night, 8 o'clock. And although we're sort of based in that Rathfriland district area, in saying that, we'll have fellas from Belfast with fellas from County Armagh. So I mean, no distance is too far. And I used to be in Cookstown, Nigel William myself, which is over an hour drive. So I think if you want to be somewhere, you'll be there regardless of the distance or that. But yeah, so every Monday night, 8 o'clock, and we do a very broad aspect of events throughout the year, from indoors to parades of the Legion, the Loyal Orders, BB, etc. And I say we do a lot of Sunday services and that as well. So what we try and do is create like a safe space for young fellas to come and join, and that their parents know, especially if they're young, like their teenage age, their parents know that they'll be well looked after and they're in the right environment, and they're being taught a skill at the end of the day, and being taught to read music and sort of pushing themselves.
Brilliant. Dead on. Nigel.
Well, Pride of the Raven practice in Lagan Village Rangers Supporters Club on a Sunday night and a Tuesday night. Sunday night's usually 6:30 practice. Tuesday night's 7 to 7:30 starts. Whether you're a novice to it or whether you're an experienced fluter that has been in a band previously and are at a loose end, you'd be very welcome down to Pride of the Raven. We're a very friendly bunch of guys. We have a good laugh. Yes, we take what we do seriously. We're always trying to improve ourselves, but anybody who's thinking about joining the band, please try out the Raven. As William said, we've guys in the band from Banbridge, we've guys in the band from Bangor, so come along, you're very welcome.
Brilliant. Folks, I just want to say thanks very much. I would say, when I was thinking about doing this here, I'm probably not the right person to be doing the interview, because I'm kind of like so intrinsically involved in the whole process anyway. But I think I really wanted to highlight the two bands, not just because of the tattoo, but just because of, one, the history and the heritage that the Raven brings to the scene, but also the quality and stuff that Moneyslane have brought to the scene in the last sort of, for me, you've been a standout band over the last sort of, for maybe the last 7-8 years. Anybody who knows talking to me, I've mentioned the band numerous times in regards to that. I think you're doing great things and stuff, and I think fair play to Nigel, because from having a behind the scenes look at stuff, I know what you put into this. So, and I think the guys in the band, fuck, there's me crying again. But no, I think people know what you put in with it, you know what I mean? And I don't think, and you took it in your stride, and you pushed the band, and we're all extremely appreciative of that. And I don't think we have you to thank for the fact that we've had this experience. So thank you.
Thanks.
One other thing I'd like to say is it's been a pleasure getting to know all you guys in the Raven. And I suppose whenever you're joining up with a band from the city and we're from the countryside, but at the end of the day, we're both doing the same thing. I don't think it'll be the end of what the two bands do together. I'm sure there'll be opportunities going forward.
I would hope so too.
For both bands to meet together, and we'll definitely keep in contact. And we've all made friendships there that I think will definitely last.
I might get an invite back to the tattoo.
You never know. I'm just looking forward to seeing the two bands join. Know what I'd love to see is on the street walking in it. So, because somebody has to blow the ball and run away. Sorry, Nigel. Well, folks, listen, thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time to come down and to share about the experience. It's been an absolutely fantastic experience for both bands that have been involved in that there, and I hope that both bands reap the benefits of what they've got from the experience in the tattoo. And I suppose a big thank you to the guys involved in the tattoo as well for taking the chance on the two bands as well. Not that it was much of a risk, to be honest with you, do you know what I mean? But I think, you know, the fact that they are doing something to try and promote the more sort of local
Definitely, yeah.
bands and stuff is really, really, I think is something that needed to happen for the tattoo, because when you look at the quality of the bands has been absolutely amazing. But I think, you know, that for me, that grassroots, almost like working class kind of bands being focused on in terms of the tattoo was a plus for them as much as it was for us. So
Yeah,
thanks
for
very
sure.
much, guys. Really.
Thanks, Glenn, for having
Thank
us.
you
No
very
Thank
much.
you.
worries.
Yes, thank you.
All right, folks, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation with William and Nigel there. Absolutely great to kind of get an insight into what actually goes on with a band, with a major event, and the preparation, the doubt, and also the excitement and the nerves and stuff that come from trying to put on what really is a top class performance from both bands. And I think you'll agree with me, if you've seen any of the footage of the tattoo that both bands did, the band seemed proud in regards to what they did there. So absolutely delighted that they could come on and share some of their experiences with us. Folks, obviously we want you to like the video, we want you to comment on the video, and also we'd love you to be able to subscribe to the YouTube channel or to our Spotify channels, etc. All of that is absolutely free. All it does is help us in terms of getting our content out to the people who may want to see it and listen to it as well. Also, don't forget that we have a fundraising event on at the minute as well. We are trying to auction off a signed Northern Ireland shirt. We have a bonus ball lotto going on, and if you go on to our socials on Facebook, you'll find out a lot about that as well. And it's a $5 a number, and you have the chance then to win the signed Northern Ireland shirt as a result of that. We have a couple more coming up as well. One will be for a special B-flat flute, which will have the Made the Parade logo on it, and also another one we're hoping will be a signed Rangers shirt that has Made the Parade podcast as the sponsor on the shirt as well. So we're going in the final stages of getting that sorted out, but that's all coming up in the future. So until the next episode, folks, look after yourselves and take it easy.